Hi, I want to take this opportunity just to um, review some things, or better said, to make some comments in this video segment about the study of the Greek New Testament and to comment on your sermons or on the notes that led up to your sermons for the extra credit project. Even if you didn't do the project, and of course it's now too late, I hope that you can and will benefit from this short video that I want to show you. First of all, I just want to begin by looking at the text of the New Testament as I was reading it this morning. Every morning I try to read one of the Psalms or Proverbs, a section of Proverbs, and then assuming that there doesn't come something that interferes, but usually I have an Old Testament reading. Right now I'm reading in the prophet Ezekiel. And then I have a reading in the Greek New Testament. I've been reading through the Greek New Testament, and now I've come to Romans, and I've come to Romans chapter 8. This morning I was reading verses 18 to 25. Get a drink of water. And let me just show you, I think that this, hope that this, yes, this webcam is working. And I will try to bring it closer. You'll see that I like to mark my text with colors, and perhaps you can see that I've tried to mark with colors. I like to use colors. Other people like to use other symbols. It doesn't matter what you use, but I would suggest that you somehow mark similarities. Now, you'll notice that the first word in verse 18 of Romans chapter 8 is logizomai. For those of you who are in Greek 1, looking at the Greek text like this may seem a little overwhelming, but let me remind you that I think this has gotten moved over a little bit. There it is. That we talked about, or we're talking about right now, about the active, middle, and passive voices, and that the forms omai, a, etai, omatha, estha, ontai, the new verb forms, the new verb endings we are learning in chapter 9, are actually endings of the present, middle, or passive voice. Many verbs that are used in the New Testament we sometimes are often called deponent, in that they may have a middle or passive form, but they're actually translated as an active. This is also one of those verbs, although it's not one that we learn in chapter 9. It is one that is used fairly often in the Greek New Testament, and it is deponent. And again, that verb is logizomai. I'll turn this camera around. Perhaps it makes it easier to see the Greek New Testament that way. Let me see if that camera will work better on this. No, not that one, this one. If it focuses in, you should be able to see verse 18, the first word, logizomai. And it means I consider, I think. this is my attitude. This is what I'm thinking. Now, that is an active voice, even though the form is middle or passive. We translate it in English as active. I am thinking. I am considering. I am having this attitude. This is a verb that can be translated in a variety of ways. And one of the things that you can do that's very profitable is to compare English translations. Go on to a website like such as Bible.com, or I think is one, or BibleGateway.com, I think is another. And when you do that, you can compare the different translations. Now, when I open my Greek New Testament to Romans chapter 8, it opens up in verses 18 with this new subject, almost, that begins with, now I consider. He's taking up the subject of suffering. And as I went through that passage this morning, I noticed how many words are repeated, how many words are similar, how many ideas, well, really, how many ideas are repeated several times. And it's very remarkable. On the one hand, we have in this passage the glory which is to come, and the expectations we eagerly await. And even those of us down in verse 23 who are the first fruits of the Spirit, we eagerly await, and we hope for. We have confidence in. Elpis means more than hope, it means actual confidence. But at the same time, he says we don't have it yet, but we have confidence. If we had it, we wouldn't have to have confidence and hope, because there's no hope if we already have it. If you already have received your Christmas present, you're not hoping for it anymore, because you've already received your Christmas present. There's no more hope. It is reality. But in this world of suffering, we live in hope, in confidence. He, on the one hand, talks about the creation, and it groans, and it is in birth pains, which is also an interesting word, birth pains, which means that a child is about to be born. So we have this eager expectation, along with the fact that we have this deep suffering. And interestingly, the Apostle Paul does not give an answer to our suffering. He does not say to us, well, your father died because of this, or your mother had COVID because of this, or you had this accident because of this. He does not give any answers like that. He does not say suffering is caused by this. He doesn't give these simple, simplistic answers. He just says it is nothing to be compared with the glory that is to come. On the one hand, he emphasizes the fact that we don't yet have this glory, but we are eagerly awaiting it. The whole creation is moaning and groaning, eagerly awaiting. It says the revelation of the sons or their children of God. And that's also an emphasis in Romans 8. Now, let me take you to your passage so we don't make this a long time. I'm going to share this screen first of all, because some of you are Greek 1 students and not Greek 3 students. So the Greek text is a little daunting for you. And remember, as we look here at the text, I don't have the advantage of the spotlight here, but if you notice the second line in each group of text, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines in the interlinear text. And the second line, de in hemerais tu basileos Herodu to Jesu, next group of lines in the blue lines, genethentos in Bethlehem tes Judaias idu magoi apo, and even Greek, not even, but Greek 1 students will also recognize that preposition apo. And the next group I put in black so that you can tell each group. So the second line in each group is the actual Greek text. The third line is the nominative singular, or the, in case of verbs, the dictionary form of that verb. Sometimes if you look down in the second group, born, genethentos, doesn't look like it is a form of genao, but it is. The verb to bear, or to produce, but in this case, to bear a child. This is the passive, aorist passive. Genethentos means was born. The child was born. It happened to the child. The child didn't bear or produce anything. The child can't. It's the mother that produces the child, that bears the child. So it's the child was born, passive voice. I hope you understand that concept. Now, if you look at this text, you will see ideas that occur several times over. Let me take you back to the Greek New Testament, and I'll hold it up. And this time we'll go to Matthew in chapter 2, to the visit of the wise men. And I think if I hold it long enough still, I think the camera, no, that doesn't work. This works better. Let me hold it down here. Hold it up here. Again, notice words that are repeated more than once. Things that stand out to you. Now, one thing I notice is that magoi in verse 1. You see magoi, tu de Jesu genethentos in Bethlehem, tes Judaias, in hemeras Herodu, tu basileos, idu magoi. And we have what are usually called the wise men, or the magi. And I think there's only one other place in this text that they are mentioned by name, magoi, and that is, I've circled it, let me see, is down in verse, well, I circled it. Oh, verse 7. Down in verse 7, tous magus. The Greek 1 students will also recognize the accusative case. That it says, Herod secretly called the wise men the magus. Now, I hope that you did some study on who these men were, and you will have learned something from Dr. Keller and from Reverend Knott about these Magoi and who they were. Oh, it's very helpful when you study the Greek New Testament. It's very helpful if you take a Bible dictionary and use the commentaries or background information that you can find. Sometimes you can find it in a lexicon if you look up the Greek word in a lexicon. Sometimes you can find it in a program like eSword. If I open eSword here, let me see my, let me share my screen again. Just a moment. I'm looking at the wrong program. Here we are. I'm going to share the screen here. Now, you may not have eSword. You may not have a laptop. I'm not sure. But if you do, I highly recommend this application, eSword. It's free, and you can download several different versions. I have here the ESV, but I also have the Greek New Testament. It's not the best text of the Greek New Testament, but it's the one that was used for the King James. It's one that's in the public domain, and I can see the text here of Matthew. You can also move from one passage in the Bible to the other very quickly. Also, you can download the Hebrew Old Testament, and you get several different Bibles here. I use the ESV the most, but sometimes the Greek New Testament. And here in the section commentaries, I've downloaded different commentaries. Mr. Barnes, Reverend Barnes, the Expositor's Bible, Alexander McLaren, and cross references here I find very helpful for many words. These are the most helpful commentaries, and there's another one with dictionaries. And there are a few different dictionaries I find helpful. The dictionaries and the commentaries sometimes can give me background information. Now, this is not the new Expositor's Bible. This is the old Expositor's Bible, by the way, that's in the public domain. But I can find out information about these Magoi, for example, that I wouldn't know by living in the 20th century. And one of my jobs that is very important as one of the jobs that I have is very important as a student of God's Word is to get back into the first century to become a student of the language of the apostles of Jesus. To become a student of God's Word, I have to get back into the humanity of the people whom God used to write His Word. So I have to understand them in their context and the words that they used in their context. They knew the people who read this for the first time would understand much more than I understand when I read the word Magoi as to who these people were. Now, normally in the New Testament, Magoi are always something negative, but these men are portrayed as scholars in the East. The wise men of their day. And I think that Reverend Knott is probably on the right track when he connects them with the wise men of Babylon in the book of Daniel, because of the fact that they expect the Messiah to be born that they expect a great ruler to be born, and they even come to worship him, which is extraordinary. Where did they get this idea that God was sending, that a great ruler was coming who would be ruler apparently over the world, if it were not from the promises of Daniel, who must have also given them perhaps even the Old Testament scriptures that he had, which would be at least the first 5 books of Moses. And in those books, the book of Numbers, and in Numbers, the prophecy of Balaam, that out of Judah will arise a star. Um, these prophecies must have come from someone, if not from Daniel, from the Jews who had been sent to Babylon. And then this wisdom was passed down through the centuries to the wise men, to the Persians, um, who came after the Babylonians. I say all this just to mention that when you do your sermon, you should try to do as much biblical exegesis as is possible. So when you see the when you see the Greek text in front of you, that you take each of these words, magoi, and you try to get behind. You can't get behind every word, of course, but get behind the most important words, and get behind um, the star, for example, seems to be important. The star is repeated over and over. Um, in this passage, the star and so on. The other thing is there seems to be in this passage a deliberate contrast. There's on the one hand the King Herod, and on the other hand, where is he, the child who has been born? Where is he who has been born? Now, this translation supplied the word child um, out of the verb has been born, which is the word here. If you look at this blue section, these blue lines, uh, tekphnes from tikto, this translation, the ESV has taken, or the RSV actually has taken these words out of that verb, which is not wrong, but there is actually not a word child here. The emphasis is upon king, king of the Jews. Now we notice that Herod is called king and this child is called king. And we notice further down that we have come to pay him homage, or we have come proskuneo. All of you should know this verb here. And look down on the third line, you see the dictionary form. The infinitive form above, those in Greek 3 will recognize the aorist infinitive of proskuneo. And we have come to worship him. When King Herod heard this, he was troubled. Now, this translation says frightened. I think that is actually a little too weak. If you compare translations, greatly troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Which brings up the big question, if they were so troubled, why did they not try to find out more about Jesus and who he was? And the answer is probably because it was too dangerous to find out. If Herod kills all the infants, as we find out later in the chapter in the region of Bethlehem, then Herod has had his secret police. And the people of Israel were living under a despotic dictatorship that made life very, very difficult for them. Now, these facts alone, I think, should encourage our our Bible study and our sermons. If our Bible study shows us that there is a contrast, we need to bring this contrast out. If I'm in Romans 8, for example, I have this sufferings of the present time, for which Paul does not give easy answers. He says the sufferings of this present times, he talks about we groan. He talks about we have birth pains. Now, I have never born children, obviously, being a husband and not a wife. But I know I have been there when our 4 children were born, and I know that this is a very, very difficult time for the wife, even a dangerous time, especially it was in the first century. So on the one hand, there is great suffering mentioned in Romans 8, verses 18 to 25. But on the other hand, there is great hope. In fact, that is the emphasis. It even begins with, I think this way, logizomai. This is the way I think. This is, and by inference, this is the way we Christians should think. Now, I'm suggesting to you that when we preach what the Bible says. And even more so, we expound, we teach what the Greek New Testament emphasizes. And the Greek New Testament emphasizes contrast in both of these passages. Contrast between the sufferings of the present time and we groan within us. All creation groans. We talk about a fallen creation. All creation groans. There are fires, there are epidemics, there are pandemics, as we have right now. All creation groans, waiting eagerly. And we have confidence. Now, that is the other side. And that, of course, we must emphasize even more. So if we're preaching on Romans 8, we must begin with the sufferings, but we must lead to the great confidence that a Christian should have. And then we must ask the people, I think, always, where is your confidence? What is your mind? What are you thinking? Are you thinking like Paul? Logizomai, I am thinking, I have this attitude that the sufferings of the present time cannot be compared in any way to what we are waiting for. I think only then can we encourage the people. If we preach, if we start where they are, if we start in this present world, and we lead them by showing them in the Bible text where we are headed for, and then asking them, do you have this attitude? Has your life been changed by the Spirit of Christ? Or if we are speaking from Matthew chapter 2, we must ask them, which one of these two are you? Are you of those who stay in Jerusalem, perhaps deeply troubled, but you are not willing to take the risk to go to Bethlehem and worship him? Because, dear folks, that is the only choice we have. We must worship the Son of God. We must make him our king. We cannot let earthly kings dominate us. Now, we may live under a dictatorship. Certainly the people in Jerusalem lived under a dictatorship. This man Herod was a terrible dictator. He was even insane. He didn't It didn't bother him at all to kill the infants in Bethlehem, to murder. Didn't bother him. And many Christians today do not live in free countries. They live in circumstances that are more like Matthew chapter 2. How will we encourage them? First of all, by identifying with them that these are troubling times. People in Jerusalem were greatly troubled. You notice the gospel did not bring peace. When the wise men came, where is he who is born the King of the Jews? This was part of the gospel, the promise to come. It did not bring peace. It brought great trouble. Even in telling the Christmas story, I think we need to mention the fact that it was a time of great trouble. In Revelation chapter 12, it mentions a great dragon trying to kill the Christ child that was being born, that was to be born and was born. I think it is in picture form in Revelation 12 what was happening in Matthew chapter 2. But notice that the wise men went anyway and worshiped the king. And then we can also talk about what that worship meant. It meant giving of themselves. It meant giving of their money, of their possessions. Our worship should include practical giving. How do we know that we are true Christians? We know it because we give, because we want to give, because we want to share, not in order to bring focus upon ourselves. We don't read about these wise men anymore. They are gone. There's no focus upon them. The Christian who gives out of a heart of worship, not out of a desire to be noticed, not out of a desire that, oh, did you see me? I put something in the basket. But only out of a desire of love for God and worship for God. And I hope that you notice too that these wise men came from the east. They were Gentiles. Gentiles were unclean. Gentiles were not the people of God. The Israelites thought they were the people of God, but these people of God, who John says he came unto his own, John 1, 10 and 11, he came into his own, but his own did not receive him. These were not those who did not receive him. These are those of verse 12 of John chapter 1. As many as received him, he gave the right to become children of God. So those who came as Gentiles and worshiped him, these are the ones who actually, as an illustration, become the children of God. So we must ask the people. There are two kinds of kingdoms here. There's the kingdom of this world with the ruler of this world. Doesn't mean that we don't have jobs within that kingdom. Perhaps we have a job like Daniel had within the kingdom, an accountant or a government official, or we make computers, or we make printers, or we sell printers, or we clean the shop or the print shop, or we have some job that relates to the kingdoms of this world. Of course, we are involved in the kingdoms of this world, but we are not troubled by the kingdoms of this world, because our star is not an earthly star. Our star is the only true star, the ruler that is to come, the ruler who has come, Jesus born in Bethlehem. I hope that when you preached on Christmas, if you did, or when you preach on Christmas, at Christmas time in the future, or when you preach at any time, Easter time, and summertime, that you will preach on the one hand, we are troubled in this world, but on the other, we have confidence because we worship the true God, the only true King. We worship him. We give him our lives, not because we want to impress anyone else, but because out of our love, out of our deliverance from fear. We have no great fear, even during the times of pandemics. We worship him alone. This was what I was looking for in your sermons. I was looking for this study of the words. I was looking for the contrast in the two kingdoms, the kingdom of this world and looking for the kingdom of Christ. But also, finally, I was looking for the challenge. Is this how you are thinking, logizomai? Is this what you are looking for? What you are longing for? What you have been watching for? Keeping your eyes focused on, look, they saw his star. Look, what are you looking for? Looking for a great job? Looking for trying to learn lots of money, looking to become a doctor? Nothing wrong with becoming a doctor if that's God's choice for you, but what are you looking for? I hope you're looking towards the great King.